Hey, everyone. Thank you so much. I am State Representative Tom Sullivan. Thank you so much for coming in and being a part of our gun violence prevention town hall panel discussion fundraiser that we are putting together. Right now, as people kind of filter in and get themselves settled, one of the suggestions that someone offered to us is if you want to go into the chat and put your name in, or anonymous, or just talk about, how it is that you got involved in the gun violence prevention space, how you've been impacted. It can be short. If you want to tell a little bit about, maybe who you knew or something, like that. Just use the space in whichever way you want. And while you're doing that, we'll get everybody here all settled, and then we will get, I'll do some quick introductions, and then we will get things started. Okay? So thanks again for everybody. Again, just reminding you, it is a panel discussion, town hall fundraiser. We are running in a very contentious Senate race here in the state of Colorado. Because of redistricting. I was redistricted out of my House seat, and the Senate seat was vacant. So I am running for that. It ends up being one of the key seat for us to maintain control of the Colorado State Senate, so that we can continue to do the things that we have been doing the last 4 years, certainly since I've been there. And I'll just give you a quick little capsule of the things, the gun violence prevention bills that have passed in Colorado since 2019. The first one was our extreme risk protection order, which was House Bill 191177. We didn't do anything in 2020 because of COVID. We were in the midst of bringing a couple pieces of legislation forward. COVID came in and everything got kind of delayed. But in 21, we ended up passing 6 pieces of legislation, including a safe storage bill, which was House Bill 1106. We did one on lost and stolen firearms, which was Senate Bill 078. We did a domestic abuser protection order, which was House Bill 1255. Those were the first 3 that our plan was to run with. And then during session, we had the Boulder supermarket massacre. And there was an opportunity, and we had more discussions, and we came out with 3 more bills to talk about that situation. And we did a local regulations, which is Senate Bill 256. We expanded the requirements on gun transfers with House Bill 1298. And we started here in the state of Colorado an Office of Gun Violence Prevention, which was House Bill 1299. And those are the 7 bills that have passed in the 4 years that I have been down there. And there's still, as everybody knows, much more to do. And that's why it's so important that we have this group here tonight. And let me introduce everybody that's here, and all friends that I have gotten to know over the years. And again, I just appreciate them taking some time out on a Wednesday. First, Shannon Watts has joined us. She's the founder of Moms Demand Action. And we're going to talk to her a little bit about that. Shannon, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
You bet. We've got a couple of our congressional members. We've got our Congressman Jason Crow from the 6th Congressional District is with us here from Colorado. We've also got from the 2nd Congressional District, Joe Neguse, and from the Brady Foundation, Christian Heyne is with us. Christian, say hi to everybody.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Thanks for having me, Tom.
Sure, you bet. And then from Giffords, we've got Peter Gerline, who's with a part of them called the Gun Owners for Safety. Peter, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Tom. Glad to be here.
You bet. Okay, so there's the congressman. So we're gonna start with speaking out to everybody, and I wanted to start with Shannon. I don't know about you. I get, when I get interviewed and talk, they always want to go back to remembering that day and how things started. And I've heard your story about, being in the kitchen or in your living room on the day of the Sandy Hook massacre, and how that kind of went, and when you went to your laptop and then hit post, and your life forever changed after you did that. Can you kind of tell us what kind of that day was like, or leading up to it, and where it's gone since then?
Yes, and so first of all, Tom, thanks for having me on tonight. You are one of my heroes. I adore you. I think you are such a wonderful human being and a fantastic lawmaker, and it's really been an honor to know you now for about a decade. And thank you for all you do. It's truly an honor to always be at any event with you. I talk about in my book, in fact, that the Aurora shooting tragedy that impacted your family so horrifically, in a way impacted my getting involved in this too, even before the Sandy Hook school shooting tragedy, because my son was in a movie theater that night, and later he saw on the news, right before he left, actually, he was going to the movie, he saw what had happened, and he had a panic attack in the theater. And he was 12 years old at the time, and it really impacted his sense of safety. And he was in therapy, and he was scared to go to school and scared to go to sleep at night. And when the Sandy Hook school shooting tragedy, I thought, oh no, here we go again, right? This is gonna happen again in our family to him. He's gonna experience this. And what he said when I told him about Sandy Hook was, that's just what happens in America, Mom. Like, he had gone from being truly upset and stunned by it to feeling like it was normal. And I knew that I had to get involved, that I had to get off the sidelines. And I started, as you said, a Facebook page in my kitchen at the counter on my laptop. And I really thought it would just be a conversation, right? How do we start an organization like Mothers Against Drunk Driving, but for the issue of gun safety? Because everything I looked up online was led by men, and it was mostly think tanks in Washington, D.C. And, I want to be part of a badass army of women, because that's who I've seen get so much done in this country over and over again. If you know anything about type A women, you know that what I thought was going to be a Facebook page became the largest offline movement in the nation for any issue. We now have 10 million supporters. We're twice as large as the NRA. We've been working on this for a decade, passing hundreds of good gun laws, stopping so many bad laws. We have a 90% track record of stopping the NRA year after year in state houses for the last 7 years. We work on this electorally. We get involved in every single election cycle. I'm very excited that our volunteers played a huge role in getting Pat Ryan elected last night in the special election in New York, because he ran on guns and abortion. And we work on this culturally. So, we teach people about secure gun storage and encourage them to ask other people if their guns are locked, unloaded, and separate from ammunition. So, the last 10 years of my life, as you said, have been life-changing. I'm a full-time volunteer. I have been for nearly 10 years. And it's an honor to work shoulder to shoulder with you and Christian and the congressman on here. I'm just really honored to be a part of the movement and to be saving lives.
Wow. Yeah, that's, that's kind of the same, with me. I remember, the first, couple of days, making sure that, my family was taken care of, my wife and daughter and stuff was taken care of. But then, watching, what happened in Sandy Hook. And then it was like, okay. And I kind of followed those families and saw what they did and got involved and started doing, the work. And then it was like, people say it's, thank you for doing it. And really, I mean, I have no other choice. It's not something I chose to do. It kind of chose me because of, what happened to Alex. And so, yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, life changing moment when you press that post button and now you talk about, and I have to tell you, I mean, every time we have a discussion, nationally about gun violence, and they tell me and they say, they preface that Shannon Watts is going to speak, it's like I can relax because I know you just have the messaging down, and they're not going to throw you curveballs that you can't hit out of the park, and I am just always so impressed by the way you field the questions, and it's just great to call you a friend, and thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you, Tom. And also I want to give a shout out to all the Moms Demand Action volunteers I see in the chat. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy evenings, as usual, to do the heroic heavy lifting of grassroots activism. Thank you.
Great. Congressman Crow, thank you so much for joining us here today, and kind of what I was hoping to chat with you about. When the theater shooting happened, you weren't in office at the time. You were, but when you got elected, it became, a central part of your district. And the word, I mean, and the word Aurora means, I mean, that's the day Alex was murdered. When people say it, it's really no longer, a city in the state of Colorado. It's an event. And what I wanted to talk to you about is how maybe heavy of a burden is that for you to be down, in Congress with all of the other members, and when you maybe say, oh, I represent Aurora, what that causes, them to, respond back to you about.
There you go. You got me out of probation.
Yep.
Thank you for releasing me. Thanks, Tom. Really good to be with you, my friend, and Shannon and Peter and Christian and my good friend Joe Neguse as well. Tremendous leaders and all the volunteers, the Moms Demand leaders joining us with us tonight. Yeah, I mean, Tom, the community that we represent jointly and our joint constituents, we have borne a disproportionate burden of gun violence in the nation, right? We represent a community that includes Columbine, that includes Aurora, that had the STEM school shooting in Highlands Ranch, that Arapahoe High School shooting, and of course, our friend Joe here represents Boulder as well. So we have seen more than our share of these terrible tragedies and horrific incidents. And it's not a burden to me, right? I mean, it's the victims and the survivors and the families that bear the real burden. It's frustrating as hell because up until just a little while ago, we couldn't get anything done, right? To try to communicate the fact that, and I'm in a community that there isn't a week or isn't a day, there isn't a moment where I'm out engaging in the community, meeting with parents and teachers and students where they don't come up and say, this is something they think about, right? It has become ingrained in the psyche of our community. And you know this well, Tom, right? How it's become this almost mass level trauma in the community that we represent, where students in our high schools and our middle schools, when they're at pep rallies and a balloon pops, they jump out of their seats or they run out of the room because that's the conditions. That's what's happened within our community, and it's been frustrating beyond description to try to communicate that to some of my colleagues that just don't know or just don't care, or they know and they're just in the pocket of the gun lobby and the gun manufacturers, and that's all they care about. So that's the frustration. That's the depths of kind of the challenge that Joe and I certainly have faced. We got something really important done this year in the Safer Communities Act, but we all know that that's just a start. There's a lot of extremely common sense things that the vast majority of Americans support that we can still do. And I know that the assault weapons ban is top of that list, right? Because you're a veteran, Tom. I was raised a hunter. I started hunting when I was a young teenager. I'm a firearm owner now. I went to war 3 times for this nation. And I can tell you this, when I grew up hunting deer, I never once took an AR-15 or an assault weapon with me into the woods to hunt a deer or to hunt a rabbit or to shoot a duck. And I never once thought about taking my deer hunting rifle or my duck hunting shotgun with me to Iraq and Afghanistan. And the reason is those are very different weapons. They were designed to do very, very different things, and they're very good at what they do. And those weapons of war, and make no mistake, that's what they are. That's what they are designed to do. Don't belong in our community and our streets back home. And I'm not going to stop fighting until we can make that happen. So thank you for having me join you all tonight.
Great, thank you, yeah, and we were at your town hall earlier this week, and I've been at a couple other events, and you get asked that question, and they come at you about that, and I just appreciate your response and your ability to be able to stand up as a veteran, and as you've told them, someone who's grown up around firearms, your entire life. And you make it very clear that the NRA and the gun lobby doesn't speak for you. And I certainly do appreciate that. Congressman Neguse, thank you for joining us today. And I want to kind of piggyback a little bit off of the conversation I was having with Congressman Crow. You, from the instance that we had going on now almost 2 years, the shooting up at the in Boulder at the supermarket, and how you had to be out front and be a part of that community, and maybe you can talk to us about how that's impacted you. And the other thing that I was thinking pertaining to that is maybe you can help us with how the community is doing, because they still haven't, as we had here in Aurora, we had the heaviness of a trial awaiting us. And we had the value of a resiliency center in our community that we can use. I know those are things they have up in Boulder. How are they doing? And what do the rest of us need to know about it? And how can we help?
Well, first and foremost, thank you, Tom, for having me today, and my gratitude to Shannon Watts, my old friend Shannon, who's just done such incredible work year after year, literally going on a decade now of organizing. And I think the results speak for themselves in terms of the legislative work that we accomplished earlier this year, which I'll talk a bit about. But Shannon, we're just incredibly grateful to you for your leadership, to all of the folks from the various gun violence prevention organizations who joined us, to my friend Jason Crow for his incredible leadership on this issue, among others. Just, again, very grateful to be in this space together, to build community and to talk about one of the most consequential and pressing challenges that we face as a country, which is gun violence. And Tom, to you, I mean, you continue to inspire me, and I know I'm not alone when I say that, countless others, in terms of your ability to really convert anguish that is beyond comprehension and to convert that into action, as you have done. And the work that you've done over your course of your career in the State House, I think has really kind of provided us with a national template, a model to pursue at the federal level. And you know this, and you were in Washington with Jason and I earlier this summer. Your fingerprints are all over the bipartisan gun safety legislation that President Biden signed into law, which, thanks to your advocacy and the advocacy of so many families and survivors and advocates like Shannon, really is the first significant bipartisan gun safety legislation enacted by the Congress in 30 years. In terms of how our community is doing, as you know, as you said, nearly 2 years ago, we were devastated by a mass shooting that happened at a King Soopers here in Boulder. I represent the 2nd District, which includes much of Boulder County. We lost 10 members of our community who were murdered that day. And as you know all too well, Tom, that the trauma that a community experiences after a devastating incident of mass violence like the one that was perpetrated on our community, never goes away. And so there are still very much families and members of our community who are in mourning. We have a resource center, the Boulder Strong Resource Center, that is still open and to this day continues to help workers from the King Soopers, family members, community members more broadly in that healing process. But I also will say, and it goes to the question that you posed to my friend Jason, my colleague, that we know, Boulder knows, that ultimately the grief and the trauma that it has experienced is not born alone. I mean, there are countless communities in our state who have been impacted by gun violence and been devastated by gun violence. I've lived in Colorado since I was 6 years old. And I can remember being in high school. I grew up in Highlands Ranch and being sent home for the day as a 14-year-old and finding later that evening as I was watching the news with my parents about why that we had been sent home, which was because of the devastating mass shooting that had happened at Columbine High School, 10 miles away. And one of the scariest days of my life was 20 years later in 2019, when I was in Congress, serving in Congress, and got a call from my sister that my niece, her daughter, who was a kindergartner, was being locked down at the STEM school, as Jason mentioned, because of the shooting that was happening there. And so as I think about what our state has collectively experienced, whether it was at the STEM school, at Columbine, in Boulder, or in Aurora, it is clear to me that Coloradans demand us to do something about this scourge of gun violence that has just afflicted our state for far, far too long. And it's why I'm grateful to you and to our other partners for your consistent efforts to try to do something about it. And, I mentioned, I sort of referenced your work being a national template. And of course, perhaps the best example of that is the extreme risk protection orders and the work that we've done in the bill that was signed, the Safer Communities Act signed by President Biden, which largely emulates what Colorado has done thanks to your leadership. But there are other steps that we can take at the federal level that we have to take as well. Jason mentioned the assault weapons ban, which I certainly support. And we, of course, as you know, the House just recently passed it. There's also steps that we can take to strengthen the background check system to make sure that people with violent misdemeanors aren't able to access weapons of war and perpetrate carnage in our communities, which is exactly what happened in Boulder. And of course, the state of Colorado has now taken the steps under your leadership to prevent that kind of violence from happening in the future by making a change to the background check system. We've introduced a bill at the federal level that really is emulated off of your bill. So I would just say, please keep doing the work that you were doing. I know you know that it matters, but I hope you know that there are countless people up here in northern Colorado, in Boulder and Fort Collins and on the Western Slope, who very much appreciate every day the work that you're doing to keep our community safe.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah. And as I say, I really don't have any other choice. You hear a lot from the people on the outside. It's not the people inside the building sometimes who really understand. And you all both know that. It's the people that you run into at the supermarkets and on the streets and all of that. So yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Christian, it's your turn now. Thank you for joining us today. I've known you for quite some time, being involved in this movement here. And I'll tell everybody that when my daughter and I first went to Washington, D.C., working with the Newtown Action Alliance, and we're doing our canvassing of legislators and senators and going to press conferences and stuff. The first group that we were involved in, Christian was the leader of our group, and we were following around behind him. And I remember the first, I can't remember who it was, but I know he was a representative from California, and that's where Christian grew up. And Christian went down and told his personal story about how he's been impacted. And what I have found in the 9+ years of working on this, the advocates, the supporters, all of them, they are just, we can't do this, without them. But the strongest, most impactful messages come from those who have been directly impacted. It's incredibly difficult for the other side to argue with us about how we feel and the trauma and the grief that we're going through. And that's what I wanted to kind of talk to you, Christian, about, is how you've taken that personal grief of, the situation with your mother and father and turned that into, all of the work that you're doing with Brady. So if you can maybe explain some of that to everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just echo all the incredible panelists and thanking you so much, Tom, not only for pulling this incredible conversation together, but just for being you. I have known you a long time, and we've been on a journey neither one of us have wanted to be on. You have taken insurmountable and incredible pain and turned that into action in a way that inspires so many people throughout the country, myself included. And I'm just so proud to know you and to be able to have conversations like these because of the work that you are doing, because it matters. Like you said, my name is Christian Heyne. I'm the Vice President of Policy at Brady. I oversee all of our state and federal policy. And I come to this movement as a survivor. In 2005, my parents, they were just coming back from a holiday vacation. It was Memorial Day. They spent the weekend getting sunburnt, eating barbecue. They had our 2 golden retrievers with them and just enjoying time on the lake. And when they came home, they had borrowed the boat that they used that weekend. And when they came to return that boat, a man lay in wait to kill my dad's best friend who had lent them that boat. He turned the gun on my dad's best friend, and then he turned the gun on my parents. He shot my dad in the stomach. And whether or not he's trying to run for his life or if he was trying to get the gunman away from my mother, we'll never know. But he turned the corner, and because it was so chaotic, and the gunman shot him 2 more times and presumably left him for dead. When he came back, my mom hadn't run away. She was trying to keep Steve alive. And neighbors tell us the last words she ever spoke were, as she begged for her life, she ran about 10 steps and was shot and killed with a single bullet to the back. This gunman went on to terrorize our entire community for the next 16 hours. My dad's best friend was killed. He died on the way to the hospital. The first responders were kind enough to tell us that my mom died before she hit the ground. We'll never know. And we're very fortunate that my father survived his shooting. But the first place where I was able to come together, like you're saying, Tom, where I was able to find a community of people who understood, even though we all had different stories, different backgrounds, different reasons of being there, was the community I found at Brady in California, with so many other incredible survivors like Amanda Wilcox, who's a Colorado resident who's on this call, who is responsible for 100 policies that have passed in California, in the way that she has worked with her husband, Nick, to honor the life of her daughter, Laura, and so many other people that I'm so lucky to have met along the way to learn how to turn our pain into purpose. But it's been 17 years, and I am just amazed at where we are. I look at a call like this, not only to have a panel that's as incredible as this, right? Because this movement was lonely for a long time, right? And to see the incredible work that, like everybody said, right? Like that Shannon has done with Mom's Demand, and the fact that I go to state houses across the country and we see red shirts everywhere. It's incredible to see, no matter what state you go in, to see that kind of support, right? To see someone like Peter here representing gun owners coming together, fighting for common sense. I have the pleasure of sitting in judiciary hearings in Congress to see Congressman Neguse fighting hard, so policies like the assault weapons ban, which did pass out of that committee, which did pass the floor of the House and is just sitting collecting dust in the Senate. And Congressman Crow, your incredible background, the way that you speak with an authority on the reason why we need these kinds of policies to save lives, what does differentiate it is remarkable. And last but certainly not least, Tom, your incredible story to bring all these things together. I sat in a room in Colorado where we were talking about the extremist protection order as a hypothetical idea. Here's a policy that people should pass. Here are the tenets of it. Here's why it matters. You were a citizen at the time, Tom, and you were taking notes. You took all the pamphlets. And then 2 years later, when you were an elected official, you were sitting in there with all those paperwork. You pulled out the folder and you had it and you said, this is the bill I want to do. And now, like Congressman Neguse said, all these years later, now Congress has passed that policy because of the work that you've laid away. You were a citizen, and now that policy has gone there because of the incredible work you did. So for everybody who's tuning in, everybody who's watching, elections matter, and electing champions for gun violence prevention matter. And it's why we're here today. It's why we're not in a moment. It's why we are in a movement, and everybody here is a part of that. It has been remarkable to be a part of this movement, and we know that we're not at the finish line yet. So I'm so thankful to everybody who's here that's shown up the way that Tom continues to show up, the way that we all try to show up, the way that everybody on this call has shown up. And please keep showing up so that we can continue to drive change and ultimately prevent families from knowing the pain and trauma and just the way that our lives will never be the same, because we'll never be able to hear the laugh of Alex, right? Or to be able to have a cigar with Alex, right? Or to be able to hear my mom laugh, right? Or to be able to hear a joke. Like that's not on the table for us. And we're going to miss that every day. Let's try to do everything we can to make sure that less Americans have to experience that.
Right. Super. Thank you so much. And yeah, not only do elections matter, but your vote matters. I mean, 6 years ago, I lost a race running for the Senate seat here because we couldn't get the excitement. We couldn't get, obviously enough votes. 2 years later, people who stood up, who voted for me, then I was able to do, as Christian said, get an extreme risk protection order passed. 2 years later, had an Office of Gun Violence Prevention started here in the state of Colorado. So I know some people don't think that their vote matters. I am a living example that your vote matters, because I couldn't get elected before, and now we are a force, and with all of your help, we'll get ourselves elected this November for the Senate seat in District 27. Peter, you're next, not last, but you're the next one that's coming up. And Peter, I wanted to talk to you about your group with Giffords called Gun Owners for Safety. Can you help us maybe understand what it's all about and how people can get involved in it?
Thank you, Tom. I'm happy to talk about that. And I want you to know I'm humbled and very proud to be part of this group here, listening to your stories, listening to what you've been doing. Very encouraging. We all know Gabby Giffords, who has been working in gun violence prevention for a long time. Giffords started organizing gun owners in 2019 as a home for gun owners who support responsible gun ownership and common sense gun regulation. Since then, since 2019, we have 7 formal state chapters. We've partnered with other gun owner organizations throughout the country, and we have members in every state from Pennsylvania to Hawaii. What I really want to talk about with Gun Owners for Safety is messaging, because the gun industry is so very good at it, and we have to be able to be good at it as well. All of us know that gun safety and gun violence prevention are not synonymous with taking away guns, but that is what the gun industry wants people to think. The gun industry wants to sell guns, and they do so by creating a narrative that divides the country into pro-gun and anti-gun groups. Please don't fall into that trap. That's what they want us to do, divide and conquer. According to a Duke University survey a few years back, the majority of gun owners in the US own 3 guns on average. Half of all gun owners own 1 or 2 guns. I own 11 guns, and I suppose that makes me more pro-gun than the average gun owner in this country. And I know that my Second Amendment rights and supporting practical solutions to gun violence are not mutually exclusive. They are necessary and prudent and urgent. There should be no difference between a law mandating child safety seats in cars with children and a law mandating that guns be secured when not in use in homes with children. The issues are identical. I hope that we can change the narrative. I've been working a lot. Most of you know about Ethan's Law. We succeeded in passing that a couple of years ago here in Colorado. It's a law that requires that guns be secured when not in use if a child otherwise could gain access to them. And I have spent most of this year lobbying first in Congress and now in the Senate in support of Ethan's law. And when I speak to legislators, I explain that Ethan's law is not a safe storage bill. Safe storage is a trigger phrase that the gun industry is using to convince people that you want to make guns inaccessible. And if you make guns inaccessible, you've taken away their guns. Ethan's law is a child access prevention law. It prevents unsupervised children from gaining access to unattended loaded firearms. No gun owner is going to disagree with that concept. So if I have a message tonight, it's we have to work with gun owners, not just against guns. The vast majority, and I don't mean most, the vast majority of gun owners, I believe, want to handle their firearms responsibly and are open to common sense solutions to gun violence. But the message has to be about safety without playing into the gun industry narrative that every gun law takes away your right to bear arms. Christian said it very well. Gun Owners for Safety is a non-political organization. We have Republicans, Democrats, independents, but we need legislators who are going to be pushing for this agenda. And that's why Gun Owners for Safety is looking forward to working with Senator Sullivan in this coming legislative session. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. And thank you, everybody, for, going through our panels there. We opened it up to, people who were going to come on to submit some questions. They've been submitting questions in the chat. One of the first ones that I want to present out is from, there's a Team Enough. They come out of the Brady campaign. It's young folks like the March for Our Lives group and the Students Demand Action that Everytown does. I see Team Enough on the screen. Is that Sierra? Okay, Sierra, you got your question and you wanted to go ahead and ask?
Hi, Tom. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful to be here with all these people of authority. You guys obviously have much more authority than us students do, but it's really important for us to be working with you. But Tom, our question for you was, what are your plans for gun policy, gun violence prevention policies in the 2023 legislative session? And what can we as a youth-led group do to help you pass those policies?
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that, Sierra. I was thinking that we would check with policy people. So Shannon, and then maybe Christian, you want to answer that? Let us know, policy wise, what we're going to be looking at in the upcoming year.
Sure. I mean, from a federal standpoint, the fact that we just passed the first bill pertaining to gun safety in a generation is really put a lot of wind under our sails. What we saw happen in states right after that was that a lot of them, where we had done a lot of heavy lifting electorally for many years, were also willing to pass good gun safety laws. So, for example, in Rhode Island and in Delaware and New Jersey and in California, and on, there were states that were passing some really innovative things. And Tom, I know you were part of this in Colorado. For example, we undid the preemption law in Colorado, which now allows us to go city by city and pass policies that keep guns out of sensitive places, like polling places or government buildings, or even to pass assault weapons bans. And we have done that. I think in 7 cities now we've passed legislation that is pertaining to gun safety. It kind of varies, but 7 cities in Colorado. And I think what we're going to keep doing is this work that it can be frustrating sometimes, right? When I use the word incremental, but that's what this is, right? It's going through every single door, and when someone closes a door, you go in the window. And that means that you're past, if someone in the state house shuts the door, then you go to the city council or you go to the school board. And so that's the kind of work we just have to keep showing up and doing like drips on a rock, right? So secure storage notification resolutions through school boards, specific policies through city council, continuing to work on passing good gun safety laws. Tom, I'm sure you have a lot of ideas as a future state senator, but also stopping bad laws. Again, like I never imagined when I started Moms Demand Action how many bad laws there are that just show up over and over and over again. And look, I think we should also all be focusing right now on November, right? The elections are about 75 days away. We should be getting out the vote. We should be registering new voters. Students are amazing at doing that on high school and college campuses. I know our Students Demand Action group registered about 100,000 new voters in the last election cycle, which is astounding. So there's so many different ways to get involved. And look, I know you know this already, but like find a piece of the work that you are passionate about and go after it. No one person, no one organization is going to solve this whole issue. We only do it by working together and finding a piece of the work that we're passionate about. And one last thing I'll say, we have unlocked over $860 million, no, billion dollars, right? $860 million in the last year alone for community violence intervention programs. Those are frontline community organizations that have relationships in their communities. They stop retaliatory gun violence. I'm on the board of one of these groups called Advance Peace. The work they're doing is heroic, and we have to keep unlocking those dollars. And that's something we can all do in our own communities.
Great, super. Christian, you got anything to add to that inclusive conversation from Shannon?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything Shannon said. Really, really well put. And yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I mean, I think in the Congress, in addition, right, there are a number of policies that the House has passed that the Senate's sitting on, right, and we know it's not an easy hill to climb, but that there are, until we are able to address gun violence in all of its forms and start to tackle these policies that particularly, right, the House Judiciary Committee that Congressman Neguse sits on, that they have been working to put forward, that, you know, they're sending bills over that are collecting dust in the Senate that a majority of Americans support. Clear and simple. Doesn't matter if they're gun owners, non-gun owners, doesn't matter what party they affiliate with. These are policies that folks on both sides of the aisle want to see get done, and there is a minority of senators that are preventing those policies from being passed, and that includes the assault weapons ban, but it also includes high capacity magazine ban, extreme risk laws. There's a lot of incredible funding that's a part of the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, but there are two specific forms of extreme risk bills, one that was carried by Salud Carbajal, another that was carried by Lucy McBath. Those policies have been joined together and were sent over that the Senate could pass as well. There's a number of policies that are important, but let's not forget even universal background checks, something that 90% of Americans support, to have a background check on all gun sales. And that's a bill that languishes in the Senate that was not even brought forward as a part of the debate for the bipartisan bill that moved forward. So we got some work to do. And in Colorado, there's a lot of additional work that needs to be done too, right? We look forward to hearing what the leadership is planning to do. Tom, what you're planning to do when you're in the Senate to bring forward really smart ideas. There is not a lack of ideas. I think that you look at the states that have passed comprehensive, strong policies, coupled with a lot of the funding streams that Shannon raises as well, and they are exponentially the individuals that live in these states that have passed these comprehensive bills. You're exponentially less likely to be shot living in these states than you are in states that have porous gun laws, and that's not an accident. That's a result of a lot of really hard work of a lot of incredible people like the ones that we see here. So I think that specifically, Sierra, what you can do to help is keep doing what you're doing. I am blown away with the Team Enough army that you all have, and the way that you show up. You do not take no for an answer. I think that a lot of times we try to out rationalize and have deep conversations on things that are incredibly simple. And And your generation is really good at cutting through that BS and reminding us who bears the burden of our inaction. And so I think keep doing what you're doing, keep showing up. And when you have the opportunities to fight for the things that we know will save lives, keep doing that.
Great,
Thank you so much, everyone.
Sure. Congressman Neguse, do you have something for us on legislatively? What's kind of next?
Well, I don't know that I could say it any better than Christian and Shannon did. I think they both articulated really well, both what we've accomplished and I think what we can accomplish in the future if we work hard enough over the course of these next 76 days, 75 days, but who's counting? Look, I mean, all of the bills that Christian mentioned that have been languishing in the Senate literally for years. I mean, we, of course, the House passed a number of important gun violence prevention measures, including HRA, just by way of example, closing the Charleston loophole in the last Congress, in the 116th Congress. And unfortunately, all of those bills ultimately sat on the desk in the United States Senate of Majority Leader Mitch McConnell at that time. Of course, now, unfortunately, the fate of at least those measures, in addition to the assault weapons ban, as was referenced, hasn't been too different. However, if we can get a few more senators elected in the United States Senate and give Majority Leader Schumer a sufficiently large majority, I believe that we will be able to get these bills across the finish line. And of course, as we've talked about, and both Christian and Shannon have noted, every one of the proposals that we're discussing today, this evening, are widely supported by the American public. I mean, it's not a question as to whether or not there is broad bipartisan support amongst the American people. It's simply politicians in Washington who have not caught up or who lack the political will fundamentally to do anything about this scourge of gun violence. So my answer is fairly similar to the answer that Shannon and Christian provided, which is we've got to do everything we can over the next 2.5 months to win this election. And perhaps no better example of the stakes than right here at home in your district, Tom, in Centennial. And when you referenced the race 8 years ago, I was thinking back to being at your house, in your garage, canvassing, organizing for your Senate election literally 8 years ago when I was on the ballot for a different office, and how hard you worked that year. And unfortunately, as we know, the midterm cycle in 2014 was not a great one for Democrats or for those who believe in common sense gun violence prevention. But we have a chance this year, I think, to turn the tide. And the momentum is on our side. And you heard Shannon talk about this a moment ago. I just saw this on Twitter literally a few minutes before joining this particular event. Pat Ryan, incredible candidate, now a representative-elect from New York's 19th district. Shannon will correct me if I'm wrong, replacing my good friend Antonio Delgado, who's now the lieutenant governor of New York. Pat Ryan ran on really addressing these fundamental threats that exist to our country. Of course, the threats to democracy, the threats to fundamental freedoms like the right to choose post the Supreme Court's ruling in Dobbs, and the threat posed by gun violence. And he won. He pulled off what many are describing as an upset, but I suspect that Shannon was not particularly surprised by that outcome because so many Moms Demand volunteers worked so incredibly hard on that race that literally just moments ago before I joined this Zoom, I saw Pat Ryan tweet out a thank you directly to Shannon and to Moms Demand for their assistance in terms of really the advocacy on the ground. So look, I think if we get the word out that, Tom, you'll be elected to the state Senate and that we will elect pro-gun violence prevention majorities at every level of state government here in Colorado, and certainly the same in Washington, D.C. So thank you all, everybody, for joining, and I hope you do everything you can to make sure that Tom is supported during the course of this election, and I'll certainly be doing that over the next 8 weeks.
Thank you, Congressman. And just before you hop off, I have a quick question for you. I was talking with our Office of Gun Violence Prevention, and I was referencing back to the federal legislation about the $75 million going to promoting the extreme risk protection orders. How do states and or organizations, I would assume it's going to be all states, how do they apply for a piece of that 75 million? The people in that office, I told them I would check with you and get back with them.
Of course, I would say first thing first, send them our way. They can reach out to our office. They can reach out to Representative Crow's office, to our senators. You are right. The funding mechanism, and Christian can talk about this a little bit further, will be through the states. But I have no doubt that Colorado will be able to successfully secure some of those dollars. And of course, as Christian said, really the bill in terms of that program and the way it was structured, I think you can see your fingerprints and the fingerprints of other folks who've worked on this particular issue, that particular policy, all over that bill. So there's still more to do. I mean, to truly enact, I think, an emergency risk protection order system that I think meets the moment, we need to get Representative Lucy McBeth's bill, who's one of my closest friends in Congress, and of course a Moms Demand alum, and Salud Carbajal's bill as well through the Congress. Both of those bills were sent to the Senate. We got to win this election, and then we can, I think, take those up in short order.
Thank you so much, Congressman, and thank you for being a part of this. My next kind of quick question, since Peter is the lawyer on the panel here, if you could kind of give us a capsulized kind of talk about the Byrne decision and really what it said, and then we'll ask the others, where we go moving forward after that.
Very, very briefly, I'm sure you're aware that the Bruen decision in the Supreme Court struck down a New York state law on the issuance of concealed carry permits. And the gist of the ruling was that you cannot leave to the discretion of an administrator whether to issue a concealed carry permit to one who otherwise is qualified to have that permit. It's a may issue law, which was similar to 6 other state laws. That was struck down. The 43 states in the country that have shall issue laws that have requirements for education, for training, for background checks, for the like, those other 43 laws stand. And the interesting thing about Bruen, and what we have to address, is that in Bruen, Justice Thomas looked for historical analogs, went to look at precedent, rather than looking at the current problems and looking for current solutions for what's going on in our streets. They look back to the founding fathers, the time of the Constitution, the time of the passage of the 14th Amendment, to get some analogs as to what laws were back there. This was a 6-3 decision, and I take some comfort in the fact that, unlike Congress, the Supreme Court actually works on a majority rule. And of the 6 justices that ruled with Justice Thomas, 3 entered concurring opinions, and a concurring opinion is an opinion that says yes, but. Justice Alito, who had written the McDonald opinion, which tracked the Heller opinion written by Justice Scalia, said, I agree with the conclusion here, but I'm going back to my McDonald opinion and reiterating, and I'm sure everyone on this call has heard this language, in McDonald and in Heller, the Supreme Court opinion said, like most rights, the right secured by the Second Amendment is not unlimited. The right was not a right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever, in any manner whatsoever, and for whatever purpose. And McDonald said, I still believe that. Justice Kavanaugh then entered a concurring opinion, again, agreeing with the majority, and Justice Roberts joined that concurrence. And in that concurring opinion, they reiterated that same language, like most rights, the right secured by the Second Amendment is not unlimited. Why do I take some comfort in that? This was a 6-3 majority, and 3 of those justices went out of the way to write a concurring opinion that said, just because we agreed with you on this one doesn't necessarily mean we're going to agree with you on every gun regulation that's out there. So my message is, don't despair. Don't panic, prepare and organize. And how do you prepare and organize? When we lobby, when we pass legislation, I think it's essential that the legislative history not just have a statement of the problem and the solution, but have some reference to historical analog. We're going to have to become historians. We're going to have to make sure that the legislative record is propped up with something that will help it sustain a court review.
Great. Thank you, Peter. And having heard that, Shannon, Christian, how is that decision changing our policy and our moving forward? I want to have hope that there's still lots for us to do and that we can continue along, the path that we've been, following these 10 years.
I would just quickly say the good news is that about 6 states are impacted by that ruling. 5 of the 6 so far have already gone in to address the impact to their permitting systems. I was actually in Sacramento today to thank California lawmakers. They're pushing their fixes through the legislative system right now. But look, I think that the good news is states are acting, with the exception so far of Maryland, but we'll get there. But states are acting to address what the Supreme Court did. I'm a firm believer in the law of unintended consequences, and I think there's ways to go in and make these state laws even better and make safety training an even more rigorous requirement. And look, some of this work is 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but we are not going to be waylaid by the Supreme Court. We're going to keep moving forward. And the best way to do that is to elect gun sense champions who will make court appointments and will make policies that are life-saving and that do not pad the pockets of the gun lobby.
Yeah, and I agree with everything that Shannon just said, and Peter, I'm confident that we'll be able to defend the laws that we have on the books and continue to pass really strong laws and to think through smart ways to be able to do that. And also, this court just unilaterally decided to upend hundreds of years of precedent and our understanding of the Second Amendment, and that has been made possible because of elections. We have to be really honest about understanding. This court is fundamentally shifting the way that we are able to craft laws in states. This court just told New York that they're not allowed to really decide what they want to do to be able to keep their citizens safe from loaded weapons in public. And we're going to fight like hell. We're very smart. We have incredibly good legal teams and so many different groups and schools that are understanding and going to make sure that the laws that have been updated as a result of this decision are going to be strong ones. And we need to also keep in the back of our mind how important each and every election is to allow a court like this to unilaterally make the kind of decision that they did, not only in Bruin, but in so many other cases that we're seeing come down. So, it kind of roots it in this entire discussion, right? But these elections do matter. Folks need to keep showing up because it doesn't only impact your individual district. People are making public safety decisions for us every day. Our elected leaders are, and that includes who sits on these courts and who interprets the laws that are being passed too. And it's really critical that folks are thinking holistically as they head to the turn in their ballots.
Christian, wow, yeah, thank you so much for that. The hour is flying by. We are towards the end of it, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So if each of you want to, one of the things that people talked about is the hopelessness in this conversation that we're having, and I've never really been hopeless. I mean, and again, I can't afford to be hopeless in this, and that's why we do the work that we do. So if each of you have some final comments, either pertaining to that or something that maybe we didn't get to ask you about, or you wanted to make sure that we knew, feel free for that. But Shannon, you have any final words for this group that are here tonight?
Yeah, I would just say we have made, all of us collectively together, such a difference in this country. And I think it is such a beacon for democracy that we are all average people who have come together, whether you're a survivor or whether you're a concerned citizen, and said, we will not live in a country where we do not have the freedom to go where we want and feel safe from gun violence. And, you know, I don't believe anytime anyone says, oh, people are numb. I think we're a traumatized country. And the fact that we wake up every day as volunteers and representatives or whatever role we play and work on this issue to save the lives of perfect strangers, I think that is democracy in a nutshell. We are making progress. We are winning. We are beating the gun lobby. And I truly believe in our lifetime, we will look back and say, we did this. We passed life-saving laws and we completely changed the culture by never giving up. And I think Tom is the epitome of that. To me, if you are a survivor and you wake up every day and do this work, you are a hero. And so, Tom, thank you for being a hero. Thank you for saving the lives of perfect strangers. You'll never know the impact that you've had, but it has been immense, not just in my life, but in so many others. So thank you.
Thank you. Peter, do you have some final words for us?
Very briefly, it's tough to follow that act, but we've heard a lot of diverse voices just on this town hall tonight. And those voices are still growing. There are still untapped resources out there that I think we can bring into this fight. We just have to find them and bring them in and do it. And don't stop.
Great. Christian, final words.
I'll just echo what everybody else has said. I mean, I'll tell you, Tom, your message of hopelessness is something we hear a lot. We hear a lot of people sort of saying, hey, if it hasn't happened now, what will it take? And I think that kind of attitude doesn't really evaluate what has really taken place, especially in the last 10 years. If you look around at where we are today and where we were 10 years ago, it is night and day where this movement stood before. I would come to events like these, there would be more of us speaking than listening, right? And you just look at the sheer force we have in so many different states. We just passed a law in this U.S. Senate where it's hard to pass anything through this tight gap we've got and requiring a 60 vote threshold. And Mitch McConnell voted for it. You know, Mitch McConnell and John Cornyn voted for a gun violence prevention package. And you know, maybe some of that is because of a moral compass that is driving them and changing their hearts. But I think what it probably has more to do with is that the political calculus is shifting, and there is a demand that people are hearing on both sides of the aisle because folks like yourselves are showing up, and because folks like you, Tom, are sitting in positions that are inspiring Americans to say enough is enough. You have answered the call, right? And like Shannon said, I don't think you understand how many people you inspire every single day with the work that you're doing. God knows none of us want you to have to be in the position that you are. But I sure am proud to know the man that you are today. And I hope that everybody who's here does everything within their power to ensure that you can keep doing the work that you're doing so that we can get to a place where families don't have to go through what we have, that we can get to a place where you can retire, right? And you don't have to be a legislator anymore, where Shannon doesn't have to run Moms Demand Action anymore, where Peter can just go and enjoy shooting his 11 guns, right? And where I can go and retire and open up a bar somewhere. I mean, that really is the future that we all want. We can get there together, but it's not going to happen unless we support folks like yourself. And I'm so thankful for everything that you do, Tom, because you're just an incredible human being.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you, all of you that showed up tonight. Certainly, thank you so much for our panelists. I mean, didn't I tell you this is such an incredibly interesting people? I mean, you know, to sit and listen to, and the time just flew by. Again, this is where we're doing a fundraiser. I see my campaign manager Nick is saying he had a goal, and those of you who have given when you came in, we certainly appreciate it. If you can give just a little bit more, that's certainly appreciative. Those of you that just came in to give a listen, hopefully you heard something that will invigorate you to donate and help us. Nick has put up information there about other events we have upcoming, about knocking on doors. That's what it takes, getting out there and talking to the people. And again, I mean, I've already been out there. So this is actually, volunteers will tell you this is one of the easiest canvases they do, because most of the people that you talk to on the doors have already met Tom, and they'll say, yeah, Tom's already been here, and we like him, and so certainly we're going to help it, and that certainly makes it easier for you to try to explain who I am. So thank you everybody for participating tonight. I can't thank you enough, and keep doing what you're doing, and help us every way you can to get us elected. It's going to be 76 days left till election day, and we're going to need every single one of you. So thank you. Good night, and thanks for spending some time with us.